It's a late night. Jennifer is hard at work and seems to be the last one in her office building. We find out that Jennifer had an argument with her fiance a few days ago and they broke up, so she decides to write an email hoping the two of them can reconcile. She decides not to send it just yet and gets up to leave. We then see Guy getting ready to leave as well. He enters the elevator with Jennifer. Guy then tries to be personable and break the ice by cracking a joke about a drawing on the elevator. She begins to comment on the drawing when the elevator suddenly begins to violently shake. The elevator stops moving although the electricity is still on. Guy begins pressing buttons for other floors and their alarm, but nothing seems to be happening. The two notice a camera and begin waving to it, but it seems no one's on the other side. They then check their phones and try finding signal around the elevator to no avail. Guy and Jennifer remark that since Monday is President's Day, they'll unfortunately probably be stuck for about 5 days. Guy says since he recently got hired, he doesn't know much about the elevator. Jennifer tells him the elevator constantly makes noise and probably hasn't been fixed in a while. Guy then suddenly comes up with an idea. He says they should climb up to the top of the elevator into the elevator shaft to find a way out. Jennifer says say less and begins taking off her boots. Guy tries jumping and pushing the top of the elevator hoping for a hatch, but he has no hops. He tries a few times and tells Jennifer to hop onto his shoulders to feel for a hatch. She tries but can't find an opening. An hour passes by and Jennifer realizes she missed her flight. Jennifer gets extremely upset and begins saying words YouTube would probably ban me for repeating. Guy starts to chuckle. Jennifer then says she's thirsty, so Guy offers her a bottle of water. She says not, she can't drink his water, and he tells her they're probably going to be here for the next few days. There's either a bottle of water or a bottle of wine, the choice is hers. To drive home his joke, he even pulls out a bottle opener. Jennifer pulls out a bottle opener of her own and the two begin to cackle. She eventually takes his bottle and drinks some water. She gives him a piece of chocolate to thank him. She then says they should ration out the food and water better because they'll probably be here for the next few days. 4 hours goes by and she says she needs to pee but is embarrassed. Guy gives her a bottle and convinces her to relieve herself, saying pee is natural and she shouldn't feel ashamed. Jennifer uses the bottle to pee while Guy covers his ears and turns away to give her some privacy. The two loosen up some more and get comfortable by taking off their jackets. Jennifer even commits a misdemeanor by carving into the elevator wall, completing the ominous drawing. She then asks Guy if he has a girlfriend that will worry about him if he isn't home over a game of makeshift basketball. He says nah, he's a loner, and asks if she has anyone waiting for her. She tells him about the issues with her fiance and they both bask in their loneliness. The duo begins sketching drawings of each other to pass the time. Guy sketches a pretty decent drawing of her while Jennifer sketches an equally decent drawing, but one meant to be a joke. She feels bad and says she'll make his drawing her profile picture. The two then start talking about food. They both begin to get hungry and quickly change the subject. They eventually arrive at the topic of sexual escapades. Jennifer mentions getting down and dirty in a library, then says it's his turn. Guy's a little shy at first, but then tells a story about him and a coworker going for a drive and going at it in the car. Things get a little hot and heavy as the two exchange glances at each other. Boom, they start making out. The two start sleeping together when Guy suddenly says the words, "I can die in your love." Jennifer has the same creeped out look we probably all have and gets a little turned off. She starts getting dressed and tells them that there must have been a misunderstanding. She says she still loves her fiance and they're probably both going to forget about this in the morning. He says nah man, he thought they had a genuine connection and she must feel the same. She tells him she's been with her fiance for a long time and can't just forget about him. She was feeling bad about a breakup and that was the extent of what happened between them. Guy gets teary-eyed and very upset. Suddenly his demeanor changes completely and he pulls out his phone. He begins to show her CCTV footage of herself in the office building and says that he's been watching her every day since he began working here. He then goes on to say his name isn't even Guy. We're gonna keep calling him Guy though. And in fact, he's a building security guard who fell in love with her while watching her walk to and from work. He stopped the elevator when she wasn't looking to give them a chance to get to know each other. He then pulls out his key to start the elevator so they can both go on their merry way. They try to make it work and it didn't. No hard feelings. Psych, Jennifer has plenty of hard feelings as she freaks out and says as soon as she leaves, she's gonna call the cops, kinda snitching on herself. She claims once she does this, Guy will rot in jail for what he did. Guy stops the elevator. Jennifer runs over to grab the key and gets grabbed herself. Jennifer starts kicking and flailing. In the process of trying to get free, she kicks the key and breaks it in two. The elevator starts to go haywire and the two are stuck for realsies. Jennifer starts putting the hands on Guy, eventually knocking him down to the ground with her shoe. She checks on Guy and it seems he's unconscious, but actually it turns out he's playing a prank on her and isn't unconscious at all. He grabs and slams her, knocking her unconscious. When she comes to, she sees Guy sitting in a corner claiming that he had a great plan. Stop the elevator, they meet, they fall in love and live happily ever after. He then states further that technically they've completed their entire relationship cycle in the elevator. They met, they fell in love, then they broke up. Guy then grabs Jennifer's bag and realizes it was a gift for her fiance. He opens it and finds a pretty nice shirt inside. He puts on said shirt and shows her his gifts that he brought for her. It's a lighter, a cigar, and a cigar cutter. I'm sure these will come in handy later. He then decides to set the mood by changing the lighting. Guy suddenly finds an opening in the elevator. He tells her to help him so he can crawl through the hatch. She says that he's too heavy for her to lift and that he should help her up instead. Guy has his doubts, but Jennifer says she'd never deceive him after they spent so much time together. Guy comes around and decides to give Jennifer a boost. He lifts her up to the top of the elevator and she offers him a hand, or rather a finger. Guy then gets super pissed and starts jumping around trying to get to the top, but my man's again has no hops. He eventually takes his clothes and creates a way to climb to the top. At this point though, Jennifer is pretty high up the elevator shaft using a ladder. She climbs to a door and begins to open it. Guy eventually catches up to her though and reaches out to grab her. He successfully grabs her, but he sends the two of them falling back down and through the elevator, knocking them both unconscious. Jennifer wakes up first and notices a fire alarm. She begins to light a fire with the cigar equipment from Guy's bag. She lights a fire, then Guy wakes up. He says it won't work and they won't be saved. Jennifer says yeah aight and kicks him in the face, knocking him unconscious again. She climbs on top of him, binding his hands and feet. When he wakes up again, she says she is sure that they'll get out soon, but he must confess while she records him. She says this will be hard to prove in court for her, so to do as she says. He says nah. She then pulls out the cigar cutter and says to confess or she'll cut something of extreme value to him. He says aye and begins to confess. Turns out his name is John and he fell in love with her after watching her every day. He was an accountant and the story about the coworker and him going on a drive he mentioned earlier was true, except for the fact that he crashed his car, killing said coworker. Because of this, he served 6 months in jail. When he got out, he couldn't find a job due to having a record, so he went overseas, here, and became a security guard. He says he staged all of this so he can have a taste of his old life again. We then see this guy, Eddie, who's another security guard for the building. He's here to take his girlfriend up to the roof and begins searching for Guy as he knows he's on shift. He searches for them on the security camera footage and finds him in the elevator. Eddie quickly sprints to the closest elevator floor and begins prying the doors open. Since the elevator is halfway down, he goes back to get his keys so the two of them can start the elevator. When he does this, John, who's freed himself, knocks Jennifer unconscious. Eddie tosses his keys into the elevator to John. John claims that he needs some help and tells Eddie to hop in. Eddie's in the middle of hopping in when Guy starts the elevator, chopping Eddie in half. John then tosses Eddie's body into the elevator shaft. John then takes Jennifer and puts her into the trunk of his car. He heads over to clean himself and grab a change of clothes. On his way down, he runs into Eddie's girlfriend who's asking about Eddie. He tells her that Eddie left. She thinks the situation is pretty suspicious but leaves anyway. John chases her down and jacks her up. John then takes his car to a remote location and pours petrol into the dumpster, planning to burn Jennifer's body. He opens the trunk and she pretends to be unconscious. She then jumps up and attacks him, knocking him to the ground. She gets into John's car and begins to drive off. She sees him stand up and begins to reverse the vehicle. John freaks out and jumps into the dumpster, but this does not stop her from slamming full force into it, severely injuring John. John is barely alive when Jennifer lights a cigar, then tosses the lighter into the dumpster, setting it ablaze, killing him. The movie ends with Jennifer marveling at her handiwork. Hope you all enjoyed the show. If you did, leave a like, and if you want to see more movie recaps, then subscribe to the channel. Take care.